Hello, everybody. Welcome to this live edition of Let's Talk. In the next hour, we'll be diving into some thought-provoking perspectives concerning the importance of polyglotism. If you have any questions to ask, please write them in the comment section on the right-hand side of your screen, right? And bear in mind the principle of disbelief, first and foremost. Don't believe in anything, not even in what we say here in our program. Experiment, have your own experiences. To talk about the importance of polyglotism, let's meet this special team of debaters join us today for the first time. Isabelle Tomani, ASSIPI volunteer in Finland, in Helsinki. Welcome, very welcome, Isabelle.
Thank you very much, Mario. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, I'm Mauri Pontieri, volunteer for Communicons. Communicons is one conscientiocentric institution that stands for International Association of Conscientiological Communication. Very welcome, Mauri.
Hi, Mario. Hi, folks. It's a pleasure to be here with you this time.
Great. And Otto Mendonça, volunteer for Reapprehension in the PAE. It's a program for the acceleration of erudition. Reapprehension is the International Association of Parapedagogy and Consciential Re-education. Otto, welcome. You are muted.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you, everyone, for the invitation. Thank you, Mauri and Isabelle. Looking forward to a very productive discussion.
Very nice indeed. Well, let's start. And our debate is based on conscientiology, and it's always good to say exactly what it is. Conscientiology is a neuroscience that studies the consciousness as a whole, right? Consciousness is me, consciousness is you, every human being on earth. The studies of conscientiology as a whole are based on consciential paradigm, which is focused on 7 pillars: bioenergies, multidimensionality, pluri-existentiality, self-research, cosmoethics, universalism, and whole soma. Conscientiology has more than 20 conscientiocentric institutions, each of them specialized in a specific subject of research. Our institution here is ASSIPI, which stands for International Association for Interassistential Parapsychism. It's specialized in the study, research, development, and the practical use of parapsychism, an indispensable attribute for consciential evolution. And this activity is from ASSIPI in English project, which is part of the international area of ASSIPI, right? ASSIPI in English project is engaged in the internationalization of conscientiology and is focused on promoting the study of the parapsychism worldwide. And let's get started with our topic today. I'd like to start by saying something that I read in the media, right? That says 95% of Brazilians do not speak English, and only 1% are fluent in the language. In terms of language fluency, Brazil ranks 41st position out of 70 countries analyzed. The survey was carried out by British Council and the Data Popular Institute of Research. I'd like to talk about it because, we are living in a country that has approximately 3,000 language schools. What is it? Why Brazilians are not speaking languages? Well, let's call our debaters to start with this topic. It's intriguing, isn't it?
Well, let me start. I think this is a reflex of many weaknesses, and the main maybe it's a educational weakness. It's a matter of education because it's not valued, it's not valorized, it's something that people think it's a thing that everybody starts with, learn his mother tongue, and then it's okay. That's enough. When we know that studying a second or a third language is a personal effort, you have to study a lot, another syntax, another everything is different, another vocabulary, another culture. It's a personal effort, and not it's not easy. You have to study irregular verbs, for instance, in another language, and that's not easy at first. Yes, some people have some facility with this, some fluency or ability on this, but it's not the most of the people. So we have this personal effort thing that is a more conscientiology or consciential issue, and you have this educational issue also. That's my view.
That's right. I would like just to throw this topic back to you, Amaury, because Amaury is one of the directors of Bertone, which is one of the best schools in Brazil, right? So I think that maybe we can talk about how English is focused in education at Bertone, for example. And it's interesting exactly what you said, because I didn't learn how to speak English at school. I actually, at the age of 19, didn't even speak. I was like intermediate level at the age of 19. So I started, I went to a language school, and I studied there for 3 years, reaching the advanced level. And then I started working in hotels, which was very good for me. But actually, I had a very slight idea of what the language was when I started really studying the language seriously. Otto Mendonça is a polyglot. Otto speaks, how many languages do you speak, Otto? 6 or how many?
Six.
Six languages. Yeah, I knew that. All right. So how did you learn those languages? How important was school for you?
That's a very good question, because when it comes to school, first off, there is school, the stream of formal schooling we get, right? That's one thing. And then there's also the private market, the public market. So if we're going to segment our discussion, right, because they both pose different problems. And then there are language schools, right? So that's also a different thing. So if you think of language, well, first off, we don't read much in Brazil, right? So that's an educational problem, first off, from the basis for the whole, all fields. If we were, for example, in a mathematical discussion, we would, right, Amaury, we would, see things from the same perspective. So first off, then it's strange that some franchises, language school franchises in Brazil, are billionaires, and we still have those figures. So it reveals something, and we have to understand what it reveals. Well, I think that one of the ways that we have to approach it, even more so when we talk about adult education, even more so in languages, we don't have time to go with the normal textbooks teaching you bedside table, right? Escrivania, ou né, uma mesinha de cabeceira. You don't need that. You need something more focused. And I think there is a balance that should be achieved between, for example, teaching for a group of people, right? Mario, you're a language teacher, you know very well what I'm saying, and customizing the content to the students. And then that's where self-learning comes in. I'm a firm advocate of self-learning, right? As a self-taught. In most of these languages, I was self-taught, except for English, of course, because we start off from a very early age. But I think that there could be some ways of understanding language methodology and strategies that could be more disseminated to the common average language learners. And I think that could have a positive benefit for their learning. But I'm also curious to know what you, Mario, and Isabelle have to say about it.
Yes,
Yes.
Isabelle. Well, come up with your experience in Finland.
Sorry, I thought I was mute. I'm not here. Yes. Well, I started learning language when I was in my elementary school, actually in Brasilia. I'm from Brasilia. We studied French. It was French in my school. So in parallel, I was in a private English school also to learn English, right? So I learned 4 years of French, but that very basic things they teach in schools in Brazil. And then I was studying a private school. I graduated at 17 years old. So when I was already in high school and a university, I knew already some basic English. But now, when I was in 2011, I moved to Finland. My husband is Finnish. And I could still, I could read in English, I could listen in English and many things, but the problem is always the speaking in English. And speaking is something that you only developed when you do it. There is no other way. You can be studying the language forever, you can read, you can understand, but speaking is a different thing. So only when I start dating my husband that we start speaking in English is when I developed speaking the English language here. And living here in Helsinki, in Finland, we have 2 official languages, which is Finnish and Swedish. But the majority of people, especially here in the South and the West, they speak English, especially the young ones, not so much the old people, but the young ones. And then when I moved here, before I came to Finland the first time, I decided, since I was living in Brazil, I decided to do a 10-day class of Finnish class, just to learn a little bit of the language and the culture before my first trip, which was tourism. Because I wanted to connect with the country, I want to connect with the language. I didn't know anything about Finland, so I thought that having some basic classes of the language would help me, and it really helped. Afterwards, I met my husband and moved to Finland, moved to Helsinki. And but here it's very interesting because I'm not an expert in Finnish education, but from what I have seen with Brazilian friends living here and has kids that were born here, they start learning a second, a foreign language already very, very early. Like in the first grade nowadays, they start learning a foreign language. Usually it's English or the second native language. In the case, for example, of Swedish that hasn't learned the Finnish, so they will learn the Finnish. And so on. And then during what they call Lukio here, which high school, they have another language that they can choose what language they learn. And usually they also have the Swedish, the Finnish, and the English. So the 3 are like compulsory. So it's very easy, I would say, for someone to speak many languages here. And also because being in, but I understand that they understand the value of speaking another language. And this is what Amaury or Otto was mentioning, that people don't read a lot. And they read a lot here. And I think you really develop the language when you read, and you also read in another language. For me, this makes a big difference. So if you don't even read in our own native language, I think it's even more complicated when you read in English or Finnish, right? But I'm now in the intermediate level, I would say B1, as they say here in the European method of the Finnish, because Finnish is a very difficult language. So I have been studying for 6 years. I have been taking private classes once a week, but I have been studying myself also. And I think that's the self-learning is very important. And nowadays we have many resources, unlike in the 70s when I started learning language. So I think people don't, as we're saying, Mario, they don't give value of how much important this is.
Very well, Isabelle. I would like just to go back to Amaury, right? Because actually, times has changed, right? Times have changed. We are living now at the moment in a very technological um, moment, right? So everything is so techy, right? So people have to get used to reading English for even video gamers, right? Video games and things like that, you know. So do you think that because you are one of the directors of Bertoni, which is a school, right? So I would like to know more about that, your experience dealing with the young people, right, at school, and how they approach languages today. Do you think the time has changed? For example, today we might find more people interested in knowing English to understand the games or to get a job or to think about something or to get connected with online issues, questions, things like that, activities. Has it changed at the moment? What do you feel that?
Yeah, I think exactly as you said, the technology is helping because not just for English, but any other language. If you want to learn a language today, with the internet and the applications that we can find today, you can learn any language and at your time and with native speakers of that language, and you choose the teacher, you choose the time, you choose the language, everything. So it's very easy today in terms of availability to choose and to study a language. It's very easy. And if you don't want to, if you want to do it by yourself, it's okay too, because you have applications that train and improve your language skills in that language, your pronunciation. It's very easy. Today we have a very favorable situation to learn another languages. But in education, one thing that Isabel speaks and that it's very important is to start early. The earliest you start to learn another language or another language, the skill of the communicability in another language, the easiest is to learn that language and
Yes.
other language, other idioms. So is in Bertoni is the way that we work there. We start early, and we try to do this in a natural way. They speak as they need. They speak as an offer, and then can play with that, and you can. They can also communicate with people in other countries. We have an interesting situation because we are in the triple frontier in Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay. So, and we have unities, scholar unities in the educational unities in the Brazil, but also in Paraguay. So we put them to speak to each other. So we are really an international school. So that we are changing our name. It's a very first-hand information. We are now going to be known as BERT International Schools because we are effectively an international school.
You are. Congratulations, because you've been running too fast. I mean, not too, very fast. Yes, well, Bertoni, it's how old is the school, Amaury?
We are completing 16 years of
Yeah, it's pretty new.
the foundation. Yes, 16 years, but we are now in 8 different cities throughout Brazil and in Paraguay also.
Very interesting. Yes, very interesting. Well, we have the first question coming up here from NEK, right? I have a question for Isabel. How did you meet your husband, and how was your adaptation to a so different culture from Brazilian one? Did you have problems because of the language or culture?
Hi, Annie. I met my husband in Portugal, actually. It was a course of Conscientiology that time. And when I moved to Finland, I had already an idea. I always had an open-minded. I has always been open-minded for other cultures and other countries. And I have visited Finland before I moved to Helsinki. So in the beginning, it takes a while for us to adapt. I would say that is that process that first we love the country, then we start, I won't say hating the country, but knowing all the problems we have. And now I feel that I'm very adapted to it. And I like here. I like here living a lot. I like a lot the Finns, the way they think, the culture. And we learn about the culture while we're studying the language, and we have to learn the way they think. Sometimes if you don't understand the way they think, you don't even understand how to speak the language. And this made a difference. But yes, there is always that inner Brazilian trying to come out. But I try to, as they say in Finnish, maasan maan tavalla, which means, as in Rome, do like the Romans. So I think it's important. Uh, Many Brazilians move to another country and they just want to be with Brazilians and have their own bubble. And I think it's important to break this bubble. Otherwise, we don't do the report. We don't do the assistance. If we're just doing assistance with energies in place, like the people who does the Penta, I do Penta here already for 8 years. So I think it's important to have this connection and understand, otherwise you don't have this connection and the assistant will always be limited.
Very good. And then she goes with all the question here. Are Finnish people nice and open with foreigners?
Yes, they are, especially if you try to adapt to what they are. You have to respect a lot the way, don't try to change how they are and try to understand. So if they see that you're trying to speak Finnish, even if you don't speak very well, they are very happy that you learn the language, that you try to speak with them. They are very friendly. Finns, they are a little shy, but once you get friends with them, they say that it's like a friendship forever. They're very loyal.
Great. As we are talking about the importance of polyglotism, I'd like to say something, and then I go to Otto. The thing is, the motive, the reason you have to speak a language, right? I always have a knack for dealing with foreigners. I always like to work with people from other countries and share, this cultural exchange. I've always been into it, and I started working in hotels. I started working as chef concierge, which is a place that you give information. You deal with guests all the time. So the thing is that when we decide to learn a language, Otto, we must have a reason for that, right? Because I just wonder, because you speak 6 languages. So what prompted you to study those languages? This is important for us to mention.
Yeah, many thanks, Mario. Well, that's very interesting. Usually, and it picks back to what we were saying, right? Because there's tech, we can start, if we start early, it gets all the better. But then there's always that human element in learning, right, folks, which is motivation and discipline. Because tech won't solve your discipline problems, right?
Yeah,
So that's the thing.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and you gotta be motivated at least, because you may be a bit dispersed, but you may still got things done if you're at least motivated. So motivation is the key, and motivation can be inner. It can be a drive to know the main texts, the written texts in the original language of the cultures worldwide. That's a very legitimate, right, drive to learn a language. Or it can also be an external source of motivation, like improve your employability profile, for example. That could also be a noble aspiration. But now, I think that when we're talking also in the framework of conscientiology, I think it's important for our public to think of mission or the existential program, right, one has, because that's the main thing. For example, in my case, I learned at an early age that I had to be at the service of people from different languages and cultures to help them understand each other, right, to achieve peace. So that's the drive behind it. Now, it happens to be languages because these are the skills I have, but that could be something else. Then it depends, of course, on the person's skills and endowments and characteristics, right? Because each person is different. And um, not because, for example, sometimes people are not in the field of languages, but they are very well developing their own things. We can also be just too, radicals, thinking that, hey, language is for everybody and let's do it. Some people don't. Well, I question, I challenge that they won't need it, but some people aren't so worried, or they don't need that to carry out their existential program. So we have to be very attentive to that. But I think that it's service, the idea of service, Mario. So learning languages came as a result of understanding that I could do something useful with my skills in the service of others. So I think that if we understand learning languages in the framework, and then of course, I mean, the benefits are if we take into account, you started off this meeting mentioning the pillars of the conscientiology paradigm, right? And we have
Yes.
multiple lives there. If we take into account multiple lives, you can guess how many cultures we've already been born into, right? So then learning a language would also be a matter of remembering things that you may have had in the past, good or bad. And then in this case, for example, a bad experience with a certain life, a bad culture experience you had in the past, for example, that could trigger a bad feeling with that. Because usually we think of learning languages, and I'm talking also about the framework of conscientiology. We think of learning languages, or we think of languages we have affinity with, right?
Sure.
In general, right? So I love French, I love English, and so on and so forth. Now, I guess that when we've achieved that level, we can go one step higher and think of learning the languages of the cultures we are not so in good terms with. Because then it would be applying learning languages to something bigger, which is, well, I may have had some problems with a certain culture in the past. So now why not, since I'm here, I have this opportunity. So why not using that, learning the language of the culture of the life you had problems with? If you are mature and that time is ripe for that, right? Because of course, then timing, it also changes depending on the journey of each person. But these are my 2 cents regarding that specific thing, Mario.
That's very, very nice to say. Okay, we have other questions coming up now. Mara, thank you for your participation, Mara. Mara asks us, what do you think polyglottism is a mental somatic attribute, or I think it just strolled up for me. Mental somatic attribute or a trafor. Trafor in English is a strong trait, right? A strong trait of character. So strong trait is the abbreviation of trafor in English, right? So of consciousness, who would you like to answer that question?
Amaury, your mute is off.
Okay. I think that the mental somatic skill that we are talking about is communicability. And then polyglottism is inside communicability. Let's say, for instance, one of the starting from where Otto finished, the word opportunity. For instance, we in travels, Brazilians, as you said, are monoglottics in his most. When Brazil, you see Brazilians in the world, when they are traveling, for instance, they disembark in another country and look for the Brazilian communities, the Brazilian restaurants. They want to walk together. So this is not these people are not taking the advantage of the opportunity to what a travel is in terms of richness of knowing another culture, of knowing another to have an experience that enlarges your cosmovision, for instance. So the polyglotism is linked with the mental soma, but he is inside another kind of ability, that is the communicability that has another issues, another skills that are involved. For instance, the cosmovision, the mental flexibility, That is, I think is important too, because exactly like this. For instance, we here in the when we are in the Foz do Iguaçu at the Triple Frontier, we see Brazilians going, for instance, to Paraguay or to Argentina, and they arrive there, and it starts to speak Portuguese with the people that the local people make an effort to speak Portuguese, but it would be otherwise. It has to be the otherwise. I am in another country. I have to do like Isabella told us. You have to make the effort. How many people study a little bit a language to go to another country, and how many Brazilians do that? It's a very few. So we have to think that this is in conscientiology we consider that this is heavy. Look at this. Monoglottism is a disease from the conscience. So
Yeah.
it's a disease in terms of communicability because you are stuck in your own culture, stuck in your own language. That's bad for the consciential development, you know.
And it goes way far from the idea of universalism that we have, right, Amori?
Yeah, that's it.
Very interesting. Well, first, I have another question coming up, but I'd like to ask Isabelle something that has to do with the question I'm going to ask, which is, Isabelle, you said that, you said that you live in Finland, you are married to a Finnish gentleman, but at home, English or Finnish?
Both. And sometimes this is what we call, I don't know if this is the right word in English, Babalism. We mix all the language together, Finnish with English, but mostly English, actually. He speaks actually in Finnish to me, and I answer in English. And sometimes we don't understand each other, but we got used to it. So.
And no telepathy in the mix. No
Not
telepathy.
yet. Unfortunately not, Otto. Unfortunately not.
Any Portuguese?
He tries to, but he doesn't has the enough effort for it. He knows some words, you know, when I speak, but he doesn't actually communicate in Portuguese. You know, I think one has really to study it to start speaking. You know.
I see. All right. So yes, why I'm asking is because Adino Preya, thank you, Adino, for your participation. Is throwing a question, which is, let me see. Hi, excellent topic. Do you have any favorite language, excluding your native language, and why? Well, mine is English. Definitely. It's the one I speak most.
Well, one can tell, right?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think it depends on that's a very nice question, but I think it depends on the vibe and depending on the occasion, because sometimes I love Spanish, for example, but sometimes I feel more like speaking French. I think it's contextual. The best is to have a wide range of languages and you pick the right one for the moment. So yeah.
Amaury, you
You're
are mute.
Yes, also in English, because I think it's very useful for the universal language that we have, the most close to the universe, the closest we have to universal language. But for instance, in my life today, I have another challenge that is to learn a new language, because I'm in the process of my Italian citizenship. So I will have to learn Italian. It's at my age, it's not so easy as when you are younger, but it's okay. Let's do it. And as language experts, because I work with texts, I am a journalist. So and that's the way. That was the way that I developed the skills of polyglotism, because I have to travel a lot. I have to cover different kinds of events, and But one thing that is very important that my mates here already told us is the motivation. You have to like to learn language, to be enchanted to know and to discover new cultures and new ways and new the things that this you have to, because if it was a burden, if for you it's a burden to learn another language, because like I said in the beginning, it's a personal effort, it's a matter of personal effort. You have to stay, you have to take some time, and you have to and different languages has different syntax, different rules and different vocabularies, and one thing that is and have the false cognates. There's many things that you have to invest. So, but for me, it's lovely. It's very. It's a challenge that I like to surpass.
And Isabelle?
For me, it's English as well. Though I studied the American English, but I have strong positive connections with UK. So something from past lives.
Definitely, yes. I have something interesting to say. Well, the time I worked at the hotels, I spoke also German because, not very good one, but in the intermediate level. And I work as chef concierge. And chef concierge in a 5-star hotel is the place where people go to get information, to get reservations at the restaurants and tours and things like this, and problems as well. So we deal with this big everyday life of the guest. And of course, there's a place to speak languages, right? At the time, I could speak German, and that was very funny sometimes because I just answered the phone and I had one guest in front of me speaking in Spanish and say, "Hola, ¿qué tal? Momento, estoy hablando y bueno, okay, so that's fine. So what would like 2 people for the tour? Okay, just more. Ele quer 2 passeios amanhã às 8 da manhã. Okay, and to the okay." You spoke 4 languages at the same time when the hotel was crowded. Yeah. And one of the benefits of speaking a foreign language is the quick thinking. What do you think, folks? Do you feel that your way of thinking gets faster? I'm not going to ask Otto this because, of course, he'll say yes because he's a simultaneous interpreter. And we know how fast we have to think in Otto when we are interpreting from Portuguese and English, and from English to Portuguese. We have to go really fast to follow up the speaker's pace, right?
True, Mario, true. The thing of the learning different languages also mean that you're able to put different tags on the same piece of reality, right? And then you can interchange that tags fast. That's one aspect of the cognitive flexibility. But another kind of flexibility that I find even more interesting when it comes to different languages, the intercultural ability, the social abilities that come with it, the contextual intelligence you have because of you're aware of different possibilities, different opinions, different feelings, different thoughts concerning around the same topic, right? So this contextual and cross-cultural approach, that's the kind of flexibility I like the most. Because see, we're talking about simultaneous interpreting, right? And you're good at it too. So you know how but in the course of time, it will be replaced more and more, at least in different niches, right? By artificial intelligence, for example. So I'm just, touching upon a specific topic, for example. But there will always be a room for a human mediation, human cultural mediation. Even if the translation per se is solved, is out of the way, you still have to touch upon the nuances and different conflicts. So there will still be room for those who can appreciate different cultures, and the language comes along with it. Right.
Definitely. Isabelle, Amaury would like to mention something.
I would like to give a testimony because I visit Isabelle in Finland, and it's exactly like she said. People there speak speak English, especially in the south and the cities that we are going. Like we don't have as we speak English also we don't have any difficulties whatsoever. So in the north, it was another it was another story, but it's incredible, and the people are very receptive, and we are very, very, very well treated there. So that's the difference when you go into a different country to know another culture, and people there speak a common language, but for their effort, not for yours. Also for yours, because you also speak a second language. But that's another kind of situation, another kind of that I think is incredible. It was very rich. It was a 1 week travel to Finland that it may be worth like if I was there 1 year. It was very it's so interesting, so interesting, and to know another culture. It was like we are in another planet because, for instance, in the case of Finnish, it's another branch of the tree of the languages. We are, for instance, we are familiarized with Latin languages, and for instance, we have similar words. Like if you go to France, for instance, the word for centro is centre. In UK, you say centre or center. But you go to Finland, and there's is keskustas or something like that. There's nothing to do, and everything is not to do. So it's interesting because you have a shock, a cultural and civilization shock of that's good for you. That's good for your, as you said, for your mental flexibility. That's, I think, that is the most amazing thing about know another language. Is the cosmovision, the mental flexibility. That there are things that we study at Conscientiology.
Yes, the effective. I think it's very good to have this effective communication all around the world, right? When you are able to talk to people. We are very communicative. I think that the whole of us, right? And imagine if you go to a place that we are unable to talk to people. That would be very anguishing for me. Isabelle, any comments?
No, I was just about to mention that I admire a lot people who can speak many languages, like especially interpretation, like you can do and Otto can do also, because sometimes I try to think, okay, I'll try to study French again. And whenever I try to speak anything French, the Finnish words come to me. So I mix all the language. So it's not so easy, you know. I'm just saying that I think it's an ability that some people have and I don't have it. So I think one language at a time, you know.
We could ask this for Otto. Sometimes there are short circuits in your case. What do you say?
That's the baby. I share this idea with you. This actually, in my case, frustration, right? I would like to speak French, but maybe I will still learn this language. It's so beautiful. We have one more question coming from Adina Oprea, right? She says, do you think this preference for a certain language is connected to the past lives? Have you had any parapsychic experiences that confirm this preference? That was very good, because I was just planning that our conversation takes the parapsychic path, and this is one good opportunity for us to start talking about this, right? In my case, Adina, definitely yes, because I actually studied in American language school. My teacher used to say, get in the car and the girls and little a bit, and all the things like that. And 1 year studying at the British school, and it's changed completely my accent. So I definitely feel myself connected to some experience in the past life. Definitely yes. Okay, let me talk my debaters what they think about that. Let's go.
Positively. Yeah, I think, and one of the very interesting experience that I have with this is in the first time that I go to France to make the coverage of the Cannes Festival of movies. I I disembarked in France, and then I start to do. It's a very beautiful country, of course, but I have I have a tendency to see the weakness traits of the things. Oh, people are so cold here, or they smoke a lot, things like that. All time that I was there.
Mm.
Then in the following week, I was in the UK. I was there's another event that I go there to make the coffee, and there it was the opposite. I think everything was beautiful, everything is so charming, and then I started thinking, well, that's not too different. It's not just because I passed the canal that it is so different. In fact, it's very similar, but my predisposition was different. So I started to realize that it was my connection, my energetic and past life connection, maybe, that it was very, and things, the things that I was doing was so very energetic. Let's say favored in that place. So I clearly realized that we have connection with places. That was a very interesting lesson for me, and that begins analyzing my own reaction, my own inner reactions to what I was seeing at the time.
Very well. Otto, any comments about it?
No, yeah, sure, sure. Maybe you can try and find connection, not only just to help expand this research and doing exactly what I'm already mentioned. I mean, you go to the place, you visit the place of the language you're thinking of, because then by being in that Holothursine, you can feel the repercussion in your own hollow chakra. You know what I mean? So by doing that, you can have those confirmations by yourself. But couple that with some research into a past life. For example, past life. I had this experience with Italian, for example, was researching the Renaissance period. And by being there, I was sure that I was back then in that period somewhere. I can't pinpoint the personality, but it's not a big issue by now. But just by knowing that you were in that culture, you know that language comes along. So try to think of language along with the culture when you carry out your research.
Very nice. And Isabelle, well, that would be a very interesting question for you because you are in Finland. So what took you to that? And not what took you to that, because of course you met your husband, but I mean, how liaised you feel with the local culture and the country?
How do I what? Sorry, there was an interruption.
How liaised you feel with the country, with the culture and people? Do you feel yourself connected? Or
I'm very connected nowadays, and Finns are very connected to nature and the forests, and this is something that nowadays I love to do, and I think it's very important, and I understand why they do it, and the simple life and the minimalism that is the life in Finland in many ways, and I give a lot of value to this. So it's interesting because I'm not Finn, of course. I don't even look like a Finn. But when I'm in Brazil, I feel like a stranger sometimes. You know, I'm not so adapted anymore to this. But regarding about Adina's question, I think that I would say one thing that is the opposite. That not what makes me connect to a language. Given my case, it was English, and I told that I have connections with the UK. But at some point in my life, I thought that, okay, I start studying French again, since I studied in the past. So when I was in my 30s, I took 1 year class, private class, also in the Alliance Française in Brasilia. But many times when I travel, especially Paris, I have so many counterflows there that I decided to quit it. And I won't say that I'm afraid to study French again. I know there's something that I have to face. But this is something that we have to think about. It's the same for me with Spanish. My name is Isabelle Dominguez Ulicea Tuomainen. So I have also from my past the people from Goiás, Spanish also, but I was never interested in study Spanish. I don't know why. I don't have a connection with the language. So maybe this is always something from the past.
Possibly, yes. We have another question coming from Eliane Voslaw. Thank you, Eliane, for your participation. How do you perceive multidimensional communication in different languages? That's a very good question, especially, Otto, in the work of simultaneous interpretation. Because one thing that I say, and I just write an article about this, is the best connected you are to the speaker, the better your work will be. Do you agree with this? And it involves coupling, energetic coupling, fusion, and things like that, right? That's quite interesting. Okay, go ahead for that.
It does. It does. Thank you, Eliane, for the question. It's a major question. It allows me to tie that to an experience back in Communicons in 2008. And Amaury, I would like to thank you publicly for your trust back then in the beginning of that project. I remember that, and I'd like to thank you for that wholeheartedly. Really helped us a lot. It helped myself as well. So really, thank you for the opportunity. What happened is, in 2008 at Communicons, we kind of incubated the team that was the first one to carry out simultaneous interpreting in SIAC, right? In Tertulliarian back then. And I even published a paper on that, right, Amaury? So it came to good fruition. We did the whole thing and we published a paper on that. And I just sent you beforehand, we were talking about that, right, Mario? It's called Tradução Oral das Tertúlias Conscienciológicas. Relato da experiência da equipe de tradução simultânea. And Eliane was there as well. So it was a great experience. And I was able to experiment what you said, Mario. When you're interpreting, first off, you will connect energetically with the speaker. And then if the speaker is hard to connect, or, you know, many things could interfere with that, it will affect your interpretation. It doesn't mean just because the guy is there speaking and you will interpret that this relationship will go down well. Sometimes there are some hiccups and you have to, you know, it will just add to your cognitive load. But when the flow is all right, and of course, you can work with your energies during the thing, which is a bit too much, right? You're too focused. So when you're too focused, I'm not sure if there are some hints of telepathy in the mix. But sometimes I don't want to just jump to conclusions and say that's parapsychism. Why? And that's very subtle, because sometimes you're just too much in the flow of the reasoning that it just makes sense for the guy to come with that idea. You know what I mean? Amaury, and so you're just developing an idea, and you know that he's gonna come with a conclusion. So he comes, therefore, I mean, when you have some experience dealing with speeches, you know where things are.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, things are. There may be telepathy, yes, but we have to look into it a bit better. But what happens is when you're fully focused, and I don't know if it happened to you, Mario, when you're fully focused, you kind of loosen your hollow chakra as well. So when it
Sure.
loosens it, it means that, man, I'm really focused on this. Right.
Yes, I feel that as well. And sometimes we have some uncomfortable moments when we just grab, you know,
Yeah.
the assistance, and we feel this in our psychosphere, and we are just going like, pa, 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 pa. You can't stop, because if you have just a slight lack of concentration, you lose the track of thought. So you must be really focused on what the person is saying. That's very interesting. Well, concerning this question, I'd like to add something that's very interesting, which is the parapolyglotism. What is this? Is when we hear the extraphysical consciousness speaking other languages. I particularly feel that not only in the simultaneous interpretation, but in any moment that we have some kind of activity in English involved. For example, when we are doing the Let's Talk, I was talking to Otto before we start. Then I said, when I wake up in the morning, the day that we have Let's Talk, I am totally switched on English. And I know that the concepts, the extraphysical concepts also are connected to me, and I can feel them. And that's 100% connection with English, right? So it's very, very enriching experience, right? Apart from speaking a language, we learn lots of things, but culturally speaking, our sense of universalism get broader and things like that. I have just good things to say about being a polyglot, which is very, 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 very important for our personal growth, right? But I'd like to hear, before going to the final words of our conversation today, I'd like to hear Amaury and Isabelle answering this question from Eliane, if you have something.
One thing that is very important in this question that Eliane brought us is, for instance, travel is my major experience with this, because you go to another country, you go to another culture, and then the inner reaction that you have with this, it will facilitate or will block your multidimensional communication and interaction. So in one of my travels, I don't remind exactly which one was. I perceived that I was afraid of being there. I was, very concerned and very worried about what we're going to do or what will happen to me there. It was a very hostile place for me in that occasion. And then I decided not to act like this. I say, what is the worst thing, the worst case scenario in this situation? Someone robbed me or someone what? And then I disconnect with that feeling and with that all of those things. I say, I will let this happen. I will let the energy flow, and then it was very good because instantaneously I feel the interaction with the thing that was there, and it was a very nothing bad happened. On the contrary, it was a very pleasant and rich travel. So I learned that. I learned there in this situation that you have to. It's like parapsychism. You have to let it flow. You have to let things happen. You have to dive in the experience without fear. Without you are very well accompanied most of the time. So it depends on your will, your intentions, but if you are with bad or good intentions, that is the most thing that you have to perceive and to realize.
Good, Amaury. Isabelle, any comment?
Not much, because I don't have a lot of experience, as I remember, or some stronger parapsychism about it. But what Amaury said now, I think it's very important not to have any counters or thing, to be very positive about the place you are, the country you are, the people you're dealing with, and having an open-minded. This will help make it easier for the rapport with the local helpers and the people.
Very good. I would like, before we go into the final words, right, to wrap up our conversation today, I would like to mention some events that are coming up soon in July. Then I would ask our dear monitors, Luisa and Annie, just to place events on the screen. We have in July, right? In the 4th of July, let me see the dates here. Okay. Luisa, could you place the event on the screen, please? The first forum of ectoplasmology and parasurgery from July 14th to 16th. It's an online on-site event with simultaneous translation to English. They will present 15 articles, 1 talk show, 4 conferences, and 1 dynamic with 3 app centers. So we are going to place the link for registration in the comment section. I would also like to talk about the Isaac, the International Week, right, of Isaac, that will take place in the end of July, July 28th to August 6th, 2023. That's a big event with lots of activities, and ASSIPI will be there carrying out a workshop, which is the personalities of the parapsychism workshop. I myself will be there carrying out this workshop with Leonard Schneider, and will be working with you. The workshop is very, very challenging, very interesting. We're going to talk about and go through the biographies of these personalities of a parapsychism, Valdo Vieira included, of course. So we are waiting for you in these events, these international events. Very nice indeed for those who are watching us and it speaks English, right, or any other foreign language. You have the chance to get connected with the Conscientiology in those events. People, thank you very much for your participation. Today I have 3 debut participations, right, with 2 new first timers. So I'd like us to have the final words to wrap up our meeting.
Well, I would like to thank you, Mario, and Otto, and Isabelle also, and congrats on the initiative of the Let's Talk About program. I think it's very important, and the choosing of the themes also, it is very, very happy and very important on the consciential development. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. So, Mario, many thanks for the invitation. Thank you for your team as well, behind the scenes, right? ASSIPI and so on. Thank you, Mario and Isabelle, for being here, for being speakers here as well. And well, I mean, polyglotism is also a matter of mindset, right? So we hope that we can help you grow and cultivate that mindset a little bit more. Mario, back to you.
All right, Isabelle, your wrap up words.
I'd just like to thank everyone that made this conversation possible here, our friends, colleagues, the ones behind the scenes there, and Kitos Palion. Thank you very much.
That's that. Well, I just have good things to say about polyglotism, and I really encourage, not only because I am a language teacher, but also because we see the importance of polyglotism, right? Especially if we are in conscientiology and we are planning to take conscientiology all over the world. So we need to be polyglot. And being a polyglot is also valuing one of the pillars, which is universalism, right? The cultural exchange, and for our personal growth, for our knowledge, self-knowledge as well, is very, very important. And Valdo Vieira, Professor Valdo Vieira used to say, polyglotism is the only way to conscientize, which is a very advanced language based on telepathy and bioenergy spoken in high advanced extraphysical communities. So we can reach conscientize through polyglotism. That's the only way. So it's never late for you to start learning a language and speaking with more people, right? This is what it matters. Our communication expands our communication. People, our next Let's Talk will take place actually in August 6th. It's not in the last Sunday of the month. It's specifically in July because of the International Week. So we'll be working International Week, and lots of people will be connected to it. So we don't have to spread our attention. So we'll be focused on the International Week. And the next Let's Talk, we'll be talking about conscientiological destinations. Romania will be missing people from Portugal. Australia, we're trying to speak with the guys in Australia also, because they have been doing a great work in Australia. I would like to know more about this. Then I'll invite them to talk about Australia. But we start with Romania in the internationalization of conscientiology. Thank you very much for your participation, and have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. See you
Thank
soon.
you.